My parents demanded my new house be big enough for my brother's whole family. Instead, I bought a small 2-bedroom bungalow. They screamed, "Where do we sleep?" I shrugged and said, "You don't." My name is Morgan, and at 34 years old, I thought I'd finally claimed a piece of the world that was just mine, my very first home. Little did I know, the moment I unlocked that front door, my family saw it as their next solution, their next free ride. What happened next wasn't just a betrayal. It was a line in the sand I never thought I'd be brave enough to draw, and it changed my entire life forever. Growing up in a seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood in Ohio, you wouldn't guess the unspoken rule that governed our 4-bedroom colonial. My younger brother, Kyle, always came first. 3 years my junior, Kyle was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. The pattern started early. I'd bring home straight A's in 3rd grade, and my report card would get a quick glance, then tucked away. 2 weeks later, Kyle would come home with C's, and suddenly, it was a celebration. My parents would whisk him off for ice cream, my mother, Sandra, practically beaming with pride. "Kyle just needs extra encouragement to shine," she'd say, while I quietly learned that excellence from me was simply expected. By middle school, the favoritism wasn't just unfair, it was literally taking over my space. I still remember walking home from 7th grade to find my bedroom furniture being hauled into the smaller guest room. My dad wouldn't even look me in the eye. "Your brother needs more space for his gaming setup," he muttered. "Boys need room to grow." I stood there, absolutely frozen, watching my carefully arranged bookshelf get dismantled. When the tears finally came, my mom pulled me aside, a gentle but firm hand on my arm. "Morgan, be reasonable. Kyle gets frustrated in small spaces. You are so good at adapting." That became the refrain of my entire childhood. Morgan adapts. Morgan understands. Morgan sacrifices. By high school, it wasn't just a refrain, it was my internal mantra. My needs were always secondary. I joined the debate team, excelled, even won regional competitions. My parents? They attended exactly 2 of my 37 tournaments over 4 years. Kyle's football games, though? They never missed a single one, even the away games 3 hours from home. But the real gut punch, the one that still stings, came during my senior year. I'd been accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship, still needing the college fund my parents had supposedly started for me as a baby. 2 months before tuition was due, Kyle, then a sophomore, crashed a family car joyriding with friends. Instead of making him face the consequences, my parents dipped into my college fund to buy him a replacement vehicle. "We'll build it back up," my father promised, looking supremely uncomfortable but determined. "Kyle needs reliable transportation for his summer job." That summer job lasted exactly 3 weeks before Kyle quit because the manager was a jerk. The car, however, became his prized possession. I ended up at State University, working 3 part-time jobs just to cover what my significantly smaller college fund and scholarships couldn't. Meanwhile, Kyle dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it wasn't the right environment for his creativity. This pattern, this sickening, predictable cycle, continued into our 20s. While I meticulously built my career in marketing, Kyle bounced between jobs, accumulating credit card debt and financial crises that my parents, without fail, constantly resolved. When he met Amber at 22, they married within 6 months. Their first child arrived just before their first anniversary. By the time Kyle was 28, they had 4 children and a perpetual housing crisis. My parents converted their basement into an apartment for Kyle's growing family 3 separate times. And each time some conflict would arise, Kyle would declare the situation toxic, and they'd move out, only to return months later when money ran short. My parents would call me, practically begging, explaining how I needed to loan Kyle money because family helps family. At family gatherings, I'd hear endless praise for Kyle. "He's such a devoted father," my mother would tell relatives, while I stood nearby, my promotion announcement, the one I'd hoped to share, forgotten and crumpled in my pocket. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me. It was that they just didn't see me. In our family ecosystem, I was the steady provider, the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention because I could handle myself. By my early 30s, I'd progressed to marketing director at my company. Years of careful saving had finally put home ownership within reach. I'd survived an economic downturn, a painful breakup with my long-term boyfriend, who simply couldn't understand my family dynamics, and the constant emotional drain of being the family fixer. This house would be mine, just mine. A sanctuary earned through years of hard work, while watching others receive endless second chances. What I didn't realize was that in my family's mind, my success was never meant to be for me alone. In their worldview, my achievement was simply the next solution to Kyle's problems. It happened on a Tuesday. I was called into my boss, Janet's, office, my stomach clenching with nerves about a marketing campaign I'd recently pitched. Instead, she smiled broadly and slid a folder across her desk. "Congratulations, Morgan. The executive team unanimously approved your promotion to marketing director. You have earned this." For a moment, I just stared at the papers, seeing the substantial salary increase that would finally put my dream within reach. That night, I allowed myself to create a new bookmark folder on my laptop. My home. The following Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house for our regular family dinner, excitement bubbling inside me. Kyle and Amber were typically late, so I thought I'd have time to share my news with just my parents first. As we sat in the living room, waiting for the lasagna to finish baking, I took a deep breath. "Mom, Dad, I have some exciting news. I got promoted to marketing director, and I'm finally going to start looking for a house to buy." My mother's face lit up, but not for the reason I expected. "Oh, Morgan, this is perfect timing. How many bedrooms will it have for Kyle's kids? They are really outgrowing the basement setup." My stomach dropped like a stone. Before I could even respond, my father jumped in. "You should look in our neighborhood. The Hendersons are selling their place for bedrooms. You could convert the den into a fifth. That would give Kyle and Amber their space, and each of the kids could have room." I sat there, my words failing me, as they continued planning my home purchase around Kyle's needs. When I finally found my voice, it came out smaller than intended. "Actually, I was thinking of a small place just for me. Maybe a 2-bedroom so I can have an office for remote work days." My mother laughed, a dismissive, airy sound, as if I'd told a cute joke. "Morgan, be practical. Why would you want all that empty space? Family needs to stick together." The front door banged open then, with Kyle and Amber herding their children inside. Within minutes the conversation had shifted, of course, to their latest landlord dispute. As Kyle complained about unreasonable expectations, about on-time rent, my mother caught his attention. "Kyle, Morgan has some wonderful news that might help everyone." Just like that, my achievement became about them. By the end of dinner, Kyle was already discussing which furniture would go in their part of my future house. Not once did anyone congratulate me on the promotion itself. The next weekend, I met Tanya, the real estate agent a colleague had recommended. She was brisk, efficient, and most importantly, focused entirely on what I wanted. "So tell me about your dream home, Morgan," she said as we sat in her office. For a moment, I hesitated, hearing my mother's voice in my head. Then I straightened my shoulders. "Something small and cozy, low maintenance. Ideally 2 bedrooms so I can have a dedicated office space. I'd love a small yard for container gardening and a neighborhood where I can walk to coffee shops or small stores." Tanya nodded, making notes, without questioning why a single woman wouldn't want a larger space for the future. That afternoon, we visited 4 properties. None felt quite right. Too close to the highway. Kitchen too outdated. Neighborhood too isolated. Then we pulled up to the 5th property. A small brick bungalow with a covered front porch and window boxes ready for flowers. The moment I stepped inside, something settled in my chest. Original hardwood floors. A kitchen with updated appliances but retaining vintage charm. 2 modestly sized bedrooms, one with perfect light for my home office. A fenced backyard just big enough for morning coffee and the container garden I had always wanted. "This is it," I whispered, almost afraid to claim it aloud. 3 days later, my offer was accepted. That night, I called my best friend Jess, who had moved to Seattle 2 years earlier. "I did it! I bought a house!" I practically shouted when she answered. "Morgan, that is amazing! Tell me everything!" For nearly an hour, we talked about paint colors and furniture placement. Jess asked about kitchen storage and whether the bathroom needed updating. Not once did she ask why I hadn't chosen something bigger or closer to my family. When we finally hung up, I felt truly celebrated for the first time. That feeling faded quickly when I called my mother with the news. "You put an offer on a house without letting us see it first?" Her tone carried clear disappointment, a sharp edge that cut through my joy. "It's perfect for me, Mom. 2 bedrooms, just like I wanted. Great neighborhood. 2 bedrooms? She sighed heavily. Morgan, we talked about this. What about Kyle's family? This is my house, Mom. For me. The silence on the line was deafening before she changed the subject. That night, my phone rang at 11:30. Kyle's name flashed on the screen. Hey sis, congrats on the house thing, he said, his voice overly casual, a little too slick. Mom mentioned it's a fixer-upper. Good thing I know construction. I can help renovate those extra rooms for the kids. My throat tightened. There are no extra rooms, Kyle. It's a 2-bedroom bungalow. A beat of silence. 2 bedrooms? So, like there's a basement we can finish? No. Just 2 bedrooms. One for me, one for my office. Then the words hit me like a physical blow. But where are we supposed to fit? Somehow, without a single direct conversation, my entire family had decided my home purchase was actually for them. Kyle, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I never said you were moving in with me. He laughed, that same dismissive, airy laugh our mother had used. Come on, Morgan. Don't be selfish. You know our situation is tough right now. As I hung up, a knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. It grew with each family interaction over the following weeks. Yet, somewhere alongside the anxiety, something else was forming. A tiny, fragile boundary that whispered, this home is mine. 6 weeks before my closing date, the family pressure escalated from assumption to outright expectation. I received a panicked call from my mother on a Wednesday evening while I was reviewing work documents. Morgan, thank goodness you answered. Kyle just called. Their landlord gave them an eviction notice for late payments again. They have 30 days to leave. I closed my eyes, already knowing what was coming next. It's perfect timing, actually. My mother continued without pausing for my response. They can just move directly into your new house when you close instead of finding a temporary place. My chest tightened, suffocating. Mom, we have talked about this. My house is not big enough for 6 additional people. Family makes do, Morgan. Your father and I have been thinking, and it really makes the most sense. Kyle can help with your mortgage, and you'll have built-in childcare if you ever need to work late. The fact that I rarely needed childcare since I didn't have children seemed irrelevant to her. Mom, I cannot have them move in with me. There literally is no space. We will discuss it Sunday, she said firmly, before hanging up. Sunday dinner arrived, and I considered making an excuse to skip it. But years of conditioning to be the responsible one won out. I arrived to find not just my immediate family, but also my Aunt Susan and Uncle Frank. As we gathered around the dining table, my father cleared his throat in what I recognized as his announcement voice. Before we eat, we have some good news to share. As many of you know, Kyle and Amber are facing another housing transition, but Morgan has generously offered to have them move into her new house when she closes next month. My fork clattered against my plate. Every eye turned to me, beaming with approval for a decision I had never made. Actually, I started, but Aunt Susan reached over to squeeze my hand. Such a selfless girl you have raised, Sandra. Always thinking of others. Amber pulled out her phone. Morgan, I wanted to show you these Pinterest boards I created for the kids' room designs. I'm thinking bunk beds for the boys in one room, and the girls can share the other space. I would need to keep one bedroom as my office, I said weakly. Kyle laughed. Come on, sis. You can work at the kitchen table. The kids need actual rooms. Throughout dinner, they discussed my house as if it were a family decision, a communal resource. Kyle mentioned converting my planned office into a bedroom for his daughters. My mother suggested I could make do with a desk in my bedroom corner. Not once did anyone ask what I wanted. After dinner, Kyle's children presented me with crayon drawings labeled, Our New Home. 8-year-old Tyler's picture showed a large house with 7 stick figures in front. 6-year-old Emma had drawn herself in what was clearly labeled, Emma's Room, with princess decorations. The twins, 4-year-old Mason and Maddie, had scribbled what their grandmother had clearly helped them label as, Our Toys, throughout various rooms of the house. I drove home that night with the drawings on my passenger seat, feeling physically ill. That week, panic attacks began waking me at 3 a.m. I would gasp for breath, imagining my small, perfect home overrun with toys, noise, and chaos. My sanctuary, slipping away before I even had the keys. At work, my performance began to slip. My boss, Janet, noticed during our weekly check-in. Morgan, you seem distracted lately. Is everything okay with the house purchase? I considered giving a polite, professional response. Instead, to my horror, I burst into tears. Between sobs, the whole story spilled out. Janet listened quietly, offering tissues. Morgan, she said when I finally quieted. What would you tell a friend in this situation? The question stopped me short. I would tell her that she deserves to enjoy the home she worked for. I whispered. Then why are you not telling yourself the same thing? The question followed me home, echoing in my head. That evening, my doorbell rang. Kyle stood there with a measuring tape and notebook. Thought I'd get some measurements for our furniture, he said, walking past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. As he measured my living room, chatting about how they would arrange their sectional sofa, something inside me began to crystallize. This wasn't just about a house. This was about my entire life pattern of sacrifice and accommodation. The following Sunday, I tried once more to correct the assumptions at family dinner. I need to be clear, I said during a rare moment of conversation lull. My house is not big enough for Kyle's family. My mother's expression hardened, a familiar mask of disapproval. Morgan, we have already told everyone. Aunt Susan mentioned it at church. Pastor Bill is organizing a moving help day for Kyle and Amber. The whole congregation knows about your generosity. The manipulation was so transparent, it should have been laughable. Instead, it felt suffocating. The realization that they had broadcast my decision to their entire social circle made my head swim. I cannot believe you would even consider backing out now, my father added, his voice laced with righteous indignation. Where is Kyle's family supposed to go? The question hung in the air, the unspoken expectation heavy between us. The same expectation that had defined our relationship for 34 years. Morgan will fix it. Morgan will sacrifice. Morgan will understand. As closing day approached, the messages multiplied. Amber sent links to bunk beds that would fit perfectly in the second bedroom. My mother called daily with updates on the moving plan. Kyle's children asked during each visit when they could see our new house. No one, not once, asked what I wanted. I became a ghost in conversations about my own home, my own life. Each night, I would sit in my apartment, surrounded by packed boxes, and wonder if I was being selfish. Was family obligation truly more important than my own happiness? Was I a terrible person for wanting space of my own? These questions haunted me as I signed the closing papers, officially becoming a homeowner. The momentary joy was clouded by dread of what would come next. That night, alone in my new home with just an air mattress and a few essentials, I sat on my empty living room floor and cried. Tears of achievement mixed with tears of fear. What would happen tomorrow when they arrived, expecting to move in? My first night in my new home should have been pure joy. I had waited so long for this moment. After crying, I pulled myself together and walked through each room, mentally placing furniture, imagining morning coffee on the back patio, evenings working in my sun-filled office. This was mine. Every square foot earned through years of hard work. I slept surprisingly well on my air mattress, waking to sunlight streaming through blinds I had yet to replace with curtains. The moving truck with my furniture would arrive at 10 o'clock, giving me a quiet morning to just exist in my space. I made instant coffee in the one mug I had brought and sat on my back step, feeling peace settle around me like a blanket. The harsh ring of the doorbell shattered that peace at 8:15. When I opened the front door, my entire body went cold. My parents stood on the porch, beaming with sickening excitement. Behind them, Kyle directed movers who were unloading furniture from 2 rental trucks. Amber was organizing boxes on the lawn, labeling them by room. All 4 children ran around the yard, shouting and laughing. Surprise! My mother exclaimed, hugging me as if she had brought me a gift rather than my worst nightmare. We thought we would get here early to help you set up before your things arrive. I stood frozen as they pushed past me into the house. My father carried in a box labeled kitchen. My mother immediately began opening cupboards, examining the space. It's smaller than I pictured from your description, she said with a slight frown. But we'll make it work. Kyle and Amber can take the master bedroom since they need the attached bathroom for all the kids' bath time. You can take the second bedroom, and the children can sleep in the living room for now. Once you're settled, we can look at converting the garage. I remained speechless as they continued their invasion. Kyle carried in a large sectional sofa, maneuvering it through my narrow doorway. "Where should this go, sis?" he asked, though he was already placing it against the living room wall. Amber directed the twins through the house, letting them explore every room. "This will be where we eat," she told them, "in the dining nook. And Daddy will set up the television here." She continued, "In my living room." My mother pulled me into the kitchen as she unpacked dishes I had never seen before. "Kyle found these at a garage sale. Much better than those modern things you had in your apartment. More family-friendly." Outside, I could hear my father instructing the movers to place a bunk bed through the doorway of what was supposed to be my office. The room I had imagined filled with bookshelves and my desk now being claimed for the boys. It was Emma, Kyle's 6-year-old daughter, who triggered the moment of truth. She tugged at my hand, pulling me toward the second bedroom. "Grandma says you will sleep here, but where will me and Maddie sleep?" My mother overheard and called from the kitchen. "Morgan, show Emma where you'll put the girls' beds in your room." "No," I whispered so quietly no one heard. Emma pulled harder on my hand. "Where will our princess beds go?" Kyle entered with another box. "Mom said you would get rid of your queen bed and get twin beds for you and the girls to share your room." My mother nodded, entering with a stack of plates. "It makes the most sense. The boys need their space, and you can bond with the girls." Then Amber entered the room, her eyes scanning the small space, confusion turning to disbelief. "Where do we sleep?" The words exploded from her when she finally saw the actual dimensions. "This is barely big enough for one person. Where do we all sleep?" Something inside me snapped. 34 years of accommodation, of swallowing my needs, of being the responsible one while everyone else took, gone in an instant. "You do not," I said, my voice suddenly calm and clear. The entire house seemed to freeze. Every eye turned toward me. "What did you say?" my mother asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I said, "You do not sleep here. None of you do. This is my house." Amber appeared in the hallway, her face contorted with indignation. "What are you talking about? We sold half our furniture to move here. We gave notice to our landlord." She pushed past me into my bedroom, then the bathroom, then rushed to check the closets as if additional bedrooms might be hidden inside them. She even checked the linen closet in the hallway, opening and closing it with increasing frustration. "Where are the other rooms?" she demanded. "Your mother said you bought a house big enough for all of us." My father's face darkened with anger. "Morgan, you deliberately misled us. You knew Kyle's family needed a place to stay." "I never offered my home," I said, the strange calm still flowing through me. "I told you repeatedly that I bought a small house for myself. You chose not to listen." Kyle appeared from the second bedroom, his face flushed. "This is ridiculous. There's no space for the kids here. What were you thinking buying such a tiny place?" "I was thinking about what I wanted," I replied, my voice gaining strength. "For once." My mother stepped forward, using the expression that had always made me back down before. "Morgan and Wilson, you cannot be this selfish. Where is your brother's family supposed to go? You have always been the responsible one. You cannot change that now when we are counting on you." Then Mason, my 4-year-old nephew, piped up. "Dad says this is our house now, too. You have to share. Sharing is caring." But it was what Emma said next that truly crystallized everything, a searing validation that ripped through the last vestiges of my self-doubt. She turned to her grandmother with pure confusion. "But Grandma, you said Aunt Morgan does not matter anyway. You said her job is to help us." The words hung in the air like a physical thing, shattering the false peace. My mother's face flushed crimson. My father looked away. Kyle and Amber exchanged glances. No one denied what Emma had repeated. Silent tears slid down my face, but the strange calm remained. I suddenly saw with perfect clarity what had always been true. In my family's eyes, I did not exist as a person with needs and dreams of my own. I was a resource to be used, a solution to everyone else's problems. The truth should have broken me. Instead, it set me free. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes, but was likely only seconds. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and took a deep breath. "Everyone needs to leave now." My voice was quiet, but firm, with an authority I'd never heard from myself. My mother recovered first. "Morgan, you are being ridiculous. We have trucks full of furniture. The movers are being paid by the hour. That is not my problem." I walked to the front door and held it open. "This is my house. I did not invite any of you to live here. I have been clear about that from the beginning, but you all chose not to listen. Kyle stepped forward, his face darkening. You cannot just throw us out. We have nowhere to go. You had a place to live until you stopped paying rent. That was your choice, not mine. Morgan! My father's voice boomed in the small space, trying to intimidate. Family takes care of family. That is how we raised you. I laughed, a sound so unfamiliar it startled even me. Is it? Because from where I stand, this family only works in one direction. I give, everyone else takes. That is not true, my mother protested, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? Let me remind you of a few things. I took another steadying breath. When I was 11, you took my college fund to bail Kyle out of juvenile detention after he vandalized the school. When I was 17, you took the rest of my college fund to buy Kyle a car after he crashed yours. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school while Kyle dropped out after 1 semester because it was too hard. Kyle rolled his eyes. Here we go again with the perfect Morgan act. I am not perfect. I have just been cleaning up your messes my entire life. I turned to my parents. Every time Kyle makes a bad decision, you expect me to help fix it. Every financial crisis, every housing issue, every problem. But when I needed support, where were you? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, unable to meet my gaze. When I was hospitalized with pneumonia 3 years ago, either of you visited because Kyle and Amber needed babysitting. When I got my first promotion, you forgot to come to the dinner I planned because Kyle had a fender bender. My entire life has been spent watching from the sidelines while this family revolves around Kyle. You are being dramatic, my mother said, but her voice was weak, defeated. Am I? Emma just repeated exactly what you think of me. I do not matter. I am just here to help everyone else. Amber stepped forward, using her children as shields. So you would just put your nieces and nephews on the street? What kind of monster does that make you? I am not putting anyone on the street. You had a home until you chose not to pay rent. That is not my responsibility to fix. Of course it is your responsibility, Kyle shouted, his face contorted in disbelief. You are family, and you have all this space to yourself. It is selfish. This is not all this space. This is a modest 2-bedroom house that I worked and saved for years to afford. I deserve to enjoy it. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. No child of mine talks this way about family obligation. Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you kids. Did you? I challenged, ice in my veins. Because from where I stand, you sacrificed everything for Kyle and expected me to do the same. The twins had started crying, confused by the shouting. Amber used this as her next tactic, kneeling beside them with an exaggerated comforting gesture. See what you are doing, traumatizing children. Is your precious alone time worth that? My hands were shaking, but my resolve remained firm. You have 2 choices right now. You can leave voluntarily, or I can call the police and report trespassers in my home. You wouldn't dare, my mother gasped. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Try me. After everything we have done for you, my father began. What exactly have you done for me lately? Name one thing in the past decade where you put my needs first. The silence was deafening. That is what I thought. I held the phone up. I am going to count to 10. Then I am calling. This is not over. Kyle snarled, but he motioned to Amber and the children. Get the kids in the car. But our things. Amber protested. 1. I began counting. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. My parents, stunned by my unprecedented rebellion, moved in slow motion toward the door. Kyle and Amber hurried their confused children outside. The movers, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama, began carrying boxes back to the trucks. 2. 3. My mother tried once more. Morgan, please think about what you are doing. 4. 5. My father put his arm around my mother. Come on, Sandra. She has made her choice. 6. 7. As they finally stepped outside, Kyle turned back, his face contorted with anger and something else, fear, perhaps. For the first time in his adult life, his safety net was refusing to catch him. You are not real family, he spat. Real family does not do this. 8. 9. They moved down the walkway, my mother openly crying, my father rigid with anger. Kyle slammed his car door so hard the window rattled. Amber herded the children into their minivan, shooting venomous looks my way. 10. I closed my front door as the vehicles pulled away. For a moment, I stood with my back against the door, shaking uncontrollably. Then I slid down to sit on the floor, sobs racking my body. Relief and grief and anger all poured out at once. My phone began buzzing almost immediately. Text messages from extended family members, Aunt Susan. How could you do this to your brother? Uncle Frank. Your parents are devastated. Cousins I rarely spoke to suddenly had strong opinions about my character. I turned off my phone and sat in the silence of my empty house. My moving truck arrived an hour later, the driver confused about the other trucks leaving. In a daze, I directed the placement of my furniture, going through the motions while my mind tried to process what had just happened. That evening, I created a Facebook account under a different name just to check what damage control my family was attempting. I didn't have to search long. Amber had posted a tearful selfie with the children captioned, "Homeless because family turned their backs on innocent children. Blood is not always thicker than water." The comments were filled with outrage on their behalf, though I noticed a few skeptical responses, questioning how they became homeless in the first place. I closed the browser and turned off my laptop. Tomorrow, I would deal with the fallout. Tonight I needed to sit with my decision and find peace in it. I walked through my house, now with my furniture in place, my couch, my dining table, my bed. Each piece representing years of careful saving and planning. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. The guilt was there, yes, as it had been programmed into me since childhood. But alongside it was something new and fragile, self-respect. The first week in my new home passed in an eerie silence. After a lifetime of responding to family needs, the quiet of my phone was disorienting. I had blocked my immediate family's numbers after the third day of constant calls and accusatory texts. But the absence of contact left a strange hollow feeling, despite the peace it also brought. I moved through the rooms, arranging and rearranging furniture, hanging artwork, creating the home I had dreamed of. Yet, each action felt mechanical, as if I were going through motions while my mind remained stuck in that confrontation. Had I done the right thing? The question haunted me as I lay awake at night. Images of my nieces and nephews looking confused and hurt replayed in my thoughts. My mother's tears. My father's anger. Kyle's parting shot about real family. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish. By day 10, the doubt had grown so overwhelming that I reached out to Dr. Winters, the therapist I had seen briefly after my breakup 2 years earlier. She had an opening that afternoon. "I think I destroyed my family," I blurted out as soon as I sat down in her office. Dr. Winters listened patiently as I recounted everything from my childhood to the showdown in my new home. She took notes occasionally, but mostly just let me talk until the words ran dry. "Morgan," she finally said, "have you ever heard of golden child syndrome?" I shook my head. "It's a family dynamic where one child is favored, often unconsciously, while another child is expected to be more responsible and self-sufficient. The golden child receives praise for minimal effort, while the other child's achievements are taken for granted." My throat tightened as she continued. "Over time, the non-favored child internalizes that their worth is tied to what they can provide for others. Their own needs become secondary, or even invisible to them. Does that sound familiar?" The tears came then, hot and fast. That's my entire life. Over the next weeks, our sessions became my lifeline. Dr. Winters helped me recognize patterns I had never seen before, how I apologized for having needs, how I measured my worth by what I could do for others, how I had built my identity around being the responsible one, the fixer, the steady support that never required support in return. Setting boundaries is not selfish, she reminded me in each session. It is necessary for healthy relationships. Alongside therapy, I began reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with over years of prioritizing family obligations. Jess flew in from Seattle for a weekend, helping me paint my office the exact shade of blue I had always wanted. "I'm proud of you," she told me as we sat on my back patio with wine glasses after a day of painting. "I always worried about how your family treated you, but I knew you had to see it for yourself." My colleague Diane invited me to a book club where I met women who asked about my interests and actually listened to my answers. My neighbor Elena brought over cookies to welcome me to the neighborhood, then invited me to a community garden planning meeting. Most surprising was the call from my Aunt Catherine, my mother's sister, whom I had always been close to but who had grown more distant in recent years. "I heard what happened," she said when I answered cautiously. "Not from your mother, of course. She's telling everyone you had a nervous breakdown." I braced myself for criticism, but instead, Aunt Catherine continued, "I want you to know I think you did the right thing. Your mother did the same thing to me for years that she has done to you, always expecting me to fix her problems. It took me moving 3 states away to break the pattern." Her words were a validation I had not realized I needed. "You don't think I'm selfish, Morgan. Buying a house for yourself is normal. Expecting someone else to house your family of 6 is what is not normal." With Aunt Catherine's encouragement, I joined a support group for adults healing from difficult family relationships. Sitting in a circle of strangers who nodded in understanding as I shared my story was powerfully affirming. For the first time, I did not feel crazy or selfish for wanting boundaries. Of course, my family did not respect those boundaries easily. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my mother showed up unannounced on my doorstep, red-eyed but determined. "This has gone on long enough," she announced when I opened the door just enough to speak through it. "Your father and I are here to help you move your things to the apartment we found for you. Kyle's family needs this house more than you do." My father stood behind her, arms crossed. Through the car window, I could see Kyle smirking from the driver's seat. "No," I said simply, and closed the door. They rang the bell repeatedly, then began knocking. I called the non-emergency police line and reported unwanted visitors refusing to leave my property. When the patrol car pulled up 20 minutes later, my parents left, my mother crying dramatically for the officers' benefit. That night, I changed the locks, though I had given no one keys. The symbolism mattered more than the practicality. As weeks turned to months, I focused on creating the home I had always wanted. I converted the second bedroom into a beautiful office with built-in bookshelves and a window seat. I planted herbs and flowers in containers on my patio. I bought art that spoke to me rather than matched a color scheme someone else might prefer. Each act of creating my space was an act of reclaiming myself. The panic attacks subsided. The guilt remained, but transformed into something more nuanced. I could acknowledge the feeling without being controlled by it. When Thanksgiving approached, the true test came. My first major holiday estranged from family. The invitation from my parents arrived by mail, formal and cold, demanding rather than asking for my presence. I declined with a brief note, and accepted instead an invitation to a friendsgiving hosted by Elena from next door. Surrounded by neighbors and new friends, passing dishes prepared with care rather than obligation, I felt a warmth I had rarely experienced at family gatherings. No one here was keeping score of who did what. No one was nursing decades-old resentments or playing favorites. We were just people choosing to share time together. Christmas brought similar anxiety, but proved even more healing. I decorated my small home exactly as I wanted, with white lights and silver ornaments rather than the multicolored chaos my mother always insisted on. I volunteered at a local shelter on Christmas Eve and spent Christmas Day with Diane and her family, who treated me as an honored guest rather than free childcare for the cousins. New Year's Eve brought an unexpected twist. Elena hosted a neighborhood gathering where I met Gabriel, a literature professor who had recently moved in 3 houses down. We talked for hours about books and travel, discovering shared dreams of visiting literary landmarks around the world. He never once asked why I lived alone or made assumptions about my real life, beginning only when I had a family of my own. As winter melted into spring, I marked 3 months of no contact with my immediate family. The ache had dulled from sharp pain to occasional melancholy. I missed the people I had always hoped they would be, rather than the people they actually were. My home had become truly mine. Each corner reflected my choices, my tastes, my life. The container garden flourished on my patio. My office became a place of creativity and productivity. The living room welcomed the friends who now visited regularly. For the first time in my life, I was not living in anticipation of someone else's needs. I was simply living. 6 months after the confrontation, my home had transformed into the sanctuary I had always dreamed of. Each room reflected my personality in a way no space I had ever occupied had before. Soft blues and grays in the living room, vibrant yellow accents in the kitchen. My office, with its wall-to-wall bookshelves now filled with volumes I had always wanted to read but never found time for. I had settled into new routines: Sunday brunches with neighbors, Tuesday evening book club, Saturday morning farmers market with Gabriel, whose friendship had gradually blossomed into something more. For the first time, I was building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The unexpected encounter came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was selecting peaches at the grocery store when I heard a familiar voice asking about paper bags at the checkout. Kyle stood there, looking somehow both the same and different. His clothes were less expensive than he usually wore. His haircut shorter, his demeanor less entitled. Our eyes met across the produce section. For a moment neither of us moved. Then, surprisingly, he approached. "Morgan," he said, his voice lacking the anger I had expected. "How are you?" "I'm good," I replied cautiously. "You?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Getting by. I got a job at Thompson Manufacturing. 3 months now. Steady work." I nodded, unsure what to say. He continued before the silence grew too awkward. "We found a 2-bedroom apartment closer to the factory. Not fancy, but the rent is manageable on my salary. Amber started working part-time too, now that the twins are in preschool." The information surprised me. Kyle had always considered factory work beneath him, and Amber had insisted staying home with the children was the only acceptable choice. "That's good to hear," I said sincerely. "Yeah, well." He looked down at his basket, containing basic groceries rather than the premium brands he usually insisted on. "Had to grow up sometime, I guess." We chatted awkwardly for a few more minutes before parting ways. As I drove home, I realized something significant had changed. Kyle had not asked for money. He had not made me feel guilty about his situation. He had simply shared information about his life, almost like a normal adult conversation. 2 weeks later, my phone rang with my mother's number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Morgan?" Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Do you have a moment to talk? I was wondering." She paused, and I could hear the effort it took her to continue. "Your father and I would like to see your house properly this time. Just a visit for lunch, if that would be okay with you." I sat with the request, checking my internal response. The automatic people-pleasing part of me wanted to say yes immediately. The wounded part wanted to refuse out of spite. But the new, healthier part recognized this small olive branch for what it was. "That would be fine," I said. "How about Saturday at noon? Just you and Dad, though. I'm not ready for a larger gathering." "Just us," she agreed quickly. They arrived precisely at noon that Saturday. My father carried a potted orchid, which he thrust toward me awkwardly as they entered. "Your mother thought you might like this for your home," he said. The closest he would come to acknowledging this was a peace offering. I gave them a tour, watching their expressions as they took in the space properly for the first time. My mother commented on my decorating choices with surprised approval. My father noticed the built-in bookshelves I had installed in the office. "Nice craftsmanship," he offered, running his hand along the wood. "Thank you. I hired the Johnson brothers from your neighborhood. They did an excellent job." We ate lunch on my patio, the conversation carefully avoiding landmines, the weather, my container garden, a new restaurant in town. Finally, as we finished eating, my father cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology, Morgan." The words clearly cost him effort. "We should not have assumed your house was for everyone. It was your achievement, and we did not respect that." My mother looked down at her plate. "We have always counted on you to be the responsible one. Perhaps too much." "Perhaps," I agreed quietly. "Kyle is doing better now," she offered. "The job seems to be good for him. The structure, you know." I nodded. "He mentioned that when I ran into him at the store." "He told us," my father said. "Said you were polite to him." "Thank you for that." The acknowledgement, small as it was, meant something. They stayed another hour, the conversation gradually becoming less strained. As they prepared to leave, my mother hesitated by the door. "Would it be all right if we visited again sometime?" "I would like that," I said truthfully. "But I need you to call first and respect if I say it is not a good time." She nodded, accepting this boundary without argument for perhaps the first time in our relationship. Over the following months, a new pattern emerged. My parents visited every few weeks, always calling. First, always just the two of them. The conversations gradually expanded beyond safe topics. Sometimes we disagreed, but they were learning, slowly, to hear my perspective rather than dismiss it. For months after our first lunch, they asked if Kyle's family could join them for a visit. I agreed, but with clear parameters. A 2-hour visit, no discussions of housing or financial help, and the children needed to respect my home. To my surprise, the visit went reasonably well. Kyle and Amber arrived with clearly coached children who said, "Please and thank you," and asked permission before touching anything in my home. The twins, now 5, presented me with handmade cards. Emma, now 7, apologized without prompting for repeating mean things Grandma said before she learned better. My mother blushed crimson at this, but did not deny it. Progress of a sort. Kyle had been promoted to shift supervisor. Amber had enrolled in online classes toward a medical billing certificate. They spoke of future plans that did not involve living with parents or siblings. Small steps toward independence that I genuinely celebrated with them. When they left, Kyle lingered behind the others. "I never said thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" I asked. "For not giving in. If you had let us move in, I would never have figured things out on my own." He looked toward his family waiting in the car. "We're doing okay. Not great yet, but okay. And it feels different when it's because of what I did, not what someone gave me." The moment of insight surprised me. "I'm glad things are working out for you, Kyle." "They are. And Morgan, your house is really nice. It suits you." As they drove away, I realized the weight I had carried my entire life had lightened considerably. My family was far from perfect. The golden child dynamic would probably never fully disappear. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, they were seeing me not just as a resource, but as a person with my own needs and boundaries. That evening, Gabriel came over for dinner. As we sat on my patio watching the sunset, he asked about my family visit. "Better than expected," I told him. "I think we're finding a new way to relate to each other." "I'm glad," he said, squeezing my hand. "You deserve people who respect your boundaries." The simple statement warmed me more than he could know. That was the real victory in all of this. Not just setting boundaries, but finding people who respected them without being forced. People who saw me as whole and complete exactly as I was. My house had become more than just a physical space. It represented the life I had built for myself. Brick by brick, choice by choice. A life where I mattered, where my needs were valid, where no was a complete sentence. The journey from family doormat to woman with boundaries had been painful, fraught with tears and doubts. But sitting here in my own space, surrounded by my own choices, I knew it had been worth every difficult moment. Sometimes standing firm is the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and others. Take care.